I mean, is it stealing or is it buying?
We are live.
Oh, okay, we're live now. We're talking about Settlers of Catan. Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Nicole Pacent. I am here with three incredible actors. This is the LGBTQ plus actors panel. Woohoo! For QFX CloudCon. So welcome. So I would love if all of you could introduce yourselves, just say your name, how you identify, and I'll just do a little icebreaker question. What character, story, show influenced your own queer coming out? I'll start with mine. Nicole Pacent, bisexual, she, her, and Angelina Jolie in anything in the late 90s. So there we go.
Oh, good one. I probably have some of that. Who's next? Not me.
Hi, I'm Daniel Franzese. Nice to see you. Mostly known for Mean Girls and HBO's Looking. I was influenced, I think, the most by probably Wilson Cruz in My So-Called Life. That was the first time I saw someone that was my age that was queer, and I thought that was really cool. And also by like tons of cute boys in Tiger Beat. But it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I think I really saw the power of what it was to be a performer and be out, and it's edged me to take the role of Damien in Mean Girls.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you. Great.
Mandahla. Oh, me? Okay. You.
Okay. I'm Mandahla Rose. I am lesbian. What were the other questions? It was
queer influence.
Do you know, I was completely oblivious until I was in a short film that I was cast in, and the producer, I was like, who is this woman? I really like her. I want to be all around her. And it wasn't until the rap party that I realized I'm gay. And it was actually then that I started looking into the rest of the world. I was very closeted until then.
So it was your own project?
It was my own project.
Your own project and your own character that made you realize.
I mean, but it wasn't that the story at all was not queer. It was being on this project and then seeing the producer and then having that experience. So that was a different experience because I wasn't really open to, I didn't know about this world at that age.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Kind of similar to that. Being trans was later, but I'm a cheerleader kind of. Anyway, my name is Alex Blue Davis. It's gonna happen the whole time. Who doesn't think linearly and doesn't know how to have a conversation? Yeah, I'm known for Dr. Casey Parker in Grey's Anatomy, and a trans guy, he, him, heterosexual. My first crush that I remember was Kirsten Dunst in Interview with a Vampire, pretty obsessively. And then, there just weren't a lot of images of trans guys it was really more like my friends that I felt like, oh, well, I've always felt this way. So there was this one guy named Joe. Damn it. His name was not Joe, damn it. Oh my God, I want to say Joe Strummer because he's one of my favorite musicians, but that's The Clash. Anyway, he's an awesome guy, Joe, and he was in a band called Coyote Grace. And so he was traveling around. You know them? They opened for the Indigo Girls a while back. Anyway, great guy. Yeah. Really, really cool. So he was like, oh my God, look at him. Okay.
Oh, nice. Cool. Well, it did occur to me before this panel, though it has now been confirmed after we're doing intros, that we have the L, the G, the B, and the T with us. How often do we get? And our powers combined, we are the Q. So
yes, we are the Q. So that's your T-shirt.
We are the Q. So that's very exciting. I do actually honestly feel like sometimes we get separated and we don't all get to be in the same space, virtual or otherwise, on panels like this often together. So I think that that's really exciting, personally. Yay. So I know we touched a little bit on this in some of the stuff that you guys just said, but if you guys could talk a little, each one of you, a little bit about your experience coming out as an actor, whether that was like whether you hit the stage and screen before you came out or afterwards. And as a second part of that, how have you seen things evolve since you came out, in terms of media? And do you think it's easier for actors to come out now than when you came out? Anybody can start.
Well, that's a lot for me to unpack. Would you like to start, Alex? Because I think I have a lot I could contribute.
Sure.
We can take it in parts.
I'm not going to say no to you. Look, my beard is in honor of you. It's really a quarantine beard, but it's in honor of you, Daniel. I really admire you. Okay, so I think the first part of it was, did I come out before or after?
Yes.
I hit the screen. So it's interesting. I kind of went in and out because in my music career, my professional independent singer-songwriter career, it happened before I started acting professionally. I was trans, I was queer, I was playing prides and parties and events. So I was definitely out and about then. And then when I started acting, I did not. Like, I just didn't mention it to my agent, my first agent. And so she didn't mention it to anyone. And I passed, so I had the privilege of sort of booking. I booked NCIS. They didn't know. Like, it was a character that wasn't trans or mentioned. It was a guest star, and it was just amazing that I didn't have to talk about it. And I was like, oh, this is my life now. And I kind of wanted to keep going and see how long that would last, just because I wasn't known in the industry, so why not? But then I saw that there was no media representation, and all these kids are really, they're out looking for representation, and they're saying they want it. And I feel like TV was ready to give it. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll be that guy. So my agents knew because they were family friends. My previous ones didn't, but I said, okay, fine, start submitting me for trans roles. And then I booked Grey's, and I felt like it was done right, which is part of it. That's part of how it's changed and why I was willing to do it, is that it wasn't a shocker. It wasn't only about my transness. It was about, I'm a whole person. He's a well-rounded person. There's more about him than just him being trans. And that it was and he didn't have to come disclose to the whole hospital. And it wasn't a big storyline there. It was like he disclosed to one person who he trusted. And then it wasn't mentioned again for 2 seasons. And everybody was like, hey, he's trans. And now he's a guy that is just on a show and being a guy. I mean, that's basically what I felt really excited about, and I think that there's going to be more of that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting sort of debate or conversation within the community and within queer media about how much and to what extent we want to highlight the identities of people, or just sort of make them part of the fabric, the organic fabric of any show or storyline. And it is such a delicate balance, right? Because you don't want to ever seem like you're hiding it, but at the same time, we're kind of all like, but we don't want all our stories to be only about that, we have so many different identities that intersect, and other characters have so many identities that intersect with queerness, that like to have something that's just about queerness feels a little bit heavy-handed. But then if we don't acknowledge it, then are we sweeping it under the rug? So I think like that's an awesome balance that they were able to strike on that show.
Yeah, and they did a lot of work with GLAAD, and they talked to me and my wife, kind of chimed in on like what would be they were just so open. I feel like that's such a big part of every conversation on the table right now is people's willingness to learn, willing to make mistakes, whatever. If your heart is in the right place, that you want to represent people and you want to be respectful and you want to use the right language and you want to use the right heart and empathy, as you mentioned in a post, which was great. And, you know, I just feel like if that spirit is there with the shows, they will do it right. You know?
Yeah.
They ask
Yeah.
the right questions, they'll do it right.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Daniel?
This is the thing that really, this is a conversation that really bothers me a lot of the time. And I still have a little bit of pain points with it because I felt like I was drawn to the arts as a queer person. Like it was a place that I found my tribe in musical theater. It was a place that I found safe spaces. It was a place that I could be flamboyant or act out or, even be sensitive and it not be challenged. So I was drama club president, I was thespian president, and I was like totally in the closet, right? And then I decided I was going to go to college and be able to be whoever I want to be. You know, college is a great resetter for all of us. We can go and like show up and start over again and potentially be popular or, you know, be studious or something that we weren't before. And so I was excited to take my identity as drama club president, which was an anomaly in my high school, and take it to some place where it was celebrated. And then I found that everybody at my school, at Florida School of the Arts, was drama club president. So then I had to have a new identity and I have to find out what's the next layer of me. And that's when I really started to experiment a little bit with my sexuality. Unfortunately, I was still in the deep South. So whereas I'm from South Florida, which is super progressive and almost like, you know, an island that's removed from the rest of Florida. Here I was now in central to North Florida, which was the deep South. And I was facing a lot of seeing my friends facing racism, seeing people face homophobia. So that only drew me closer into the closet. To me, being an actor was an escape. I could play somebody else. I could play a gay character. I could play, you know, someone else. I may never be able to be a doctor, but I could play a doctor. There were things I could do in my life that were superhuman as an actor that I wasn't able to have the ability to do. It definitely gave, and also, I think as a queer person who is also overweight and of size, to me that was something where now I had this other group that I could maybe join that wasn't accepting me either and wasn't necessarily pulling me towards them either. Because there's a huge restriction on what you have to be and what you want to be in order to become a part of the gay community sometimes, especially the gay community of yesteryear. I mean, we're becoming more woke and more accepting every day. But this was not the case in the 90s and, you know, in the case when I was coming to pass of what I was. So I left college as a musical theater major and put myself into conversion therapy as a way to sort of just like find, I didn't want to go to hell. I didn't want to, I was Christian. I felt like that wasn't the answer. I felt like I could live out all of my fantasies and things as a performer, and that God had given me this gift. And that if I had followed the gift, that perhaps the gift was the thing that would be my salvation from all of this other stuff. And that led me ultimately, long story short, to Mean Girls. And at the time that I had gotten Mean Girls, here I am, a closeted actor. I am, at this point, living a life as a gay man outside of the industry, holding hands on the street, feeling comfortable with who I was, with the people that I dated, and doing things like that. And because I was living in New York City, and New York City is the ultimate, if you're gay and you need a place to go, get your ass to New York, because it is the ultimate accepting environment. But that was the idea, right? Like it's also the place for entertainment for that same reason. But I was still terrified of being found out, because once I had booked Mean Girls, the real power of a project that you do is not after it comes out. It's like in the moment from when you book it to the moment it airs, because Hollywood is a very what have you done lately for me town. So it didn't even matter that I had the #1 movie in theaters 3 weeks in a row. People didn't care. They were like, what are you doing next? And I was like, I don't know, you tell me, you know? So at this point, I had started out as a New York Italian actor auditioning for things like Sopranos and getting close to getting Turtle and Entourage and getting all these other roles and being at over 37 combined CSI, NCIS, and Law and Order auditions, because it's like one of the auditions in New York City that sees you locally. So I like did 37 without booking of these like auditions, and then I get Mean Girls, and they're only letting me audition for gay parts, and all of those 37 Law and Orders dried up. And I remember I had a distinct defining moment where I was auditioning for the movie Sherry Baby with Maggie Gyllenhaal. In this movie, Maggie Gyllenhaal plays a drug addict who gives up her child at birth, and her sister-in-law raised the child until 12 years old. And then Maggie gets out of jail and rehab and comes to collect her child after her family has raised it as their own for 12 years. Very complicated movie. I hear it. It was beautiful when I read it. I've never had the courage to watch it. But in this movie, her sister-in-law was played by Bridget Barkin, who is one of my dearest friends. Bridget and I had done 3 plays and 3 movies together. We moved to LA together. We were so close. We basically like baby birds ate out of each other's mouths, like making out wouldn't have been a thing. The role of her husband was available, and they couldn't find someone for it. And the breakdown description of the character said, a doughy, blue-collar, big lug of a guy. And I was like, oh shit, that's me. Like, that's who I play. That is my, even more so than Damien, who I was actually surprised to land. I thought that might go to maybe a more flamboyant, more fun, expressive person. Like, I mean, I pushed myself to those limits, but like, even more so than Damien, I'm a doughy, blue collar, big lug of a guy, like straight up. Even as a gay man who's like a celebrity and actor, I'm a blue collar actor, you know, like I'm just that person. And so I wanted to audition for the role, and they wouldn't let me audition. They were like, we know Daniel, we think he's a terrific actor, but we're looking for a man's man. And that's when I started to, and there was a lesbian casting director. And that is when I started to see that not only was I being held back and meeting this like gay glass ceiling, but it was a lot of our family, our LGBT people, and because there really weren't that many T people, but it was like the gays and the lesbians in Hollywood that were holding me back. They were the ones that could sniff me out when I walked in the room, and it felt really horrible. And so I withdrew myself and went back into being closeted, and was celibate for 2 years, and I moved to Los Angeles, didn't go to any gay clubs, didn't date anyone, kiss anyone, until I met someone that was my boyfriend, and then I was in a relationship for 5 years. It was a very difficult time for me. And there were a lot of years that I didn't work. My story is not that great as far as that goes. I'm not trying to have some kind of sob story. I found so many other parts of myself during that time. But the roles that I was getting offered were these backwards, like exploitative, like gay roles. Like I had done Damien, who had been so progressive. It was the first time I had seen a queer teen of size not get his head shoved in a toilet or be locked in a locker. He was able to just breathe, and it was like it was a safe place for a lot of queer teens. I had gotten letters from girls in like Texas who were like, my best friend used to not be allowed to come over for dinner, but now I'm like, Mama, he's just a Damien. And like, it just like, it was like this pass for queer teens to be able to be themselves. And here I was, the person who played it, still confined to that prison. And it wasn't until the 10th year anniversary in 2014 when I had gotten tons of fan mail, but this was something else. The LGBTQ community didn't really embrace me. I didn't get a GLAAD award. I wasn't invited to things, but that made sense because I wasn't claiming them. So I understood that it's a two-way street, and almost like if they did, I don't know how I would have reacted. But around the 10th anniversary, everyone sort of just like realized that Mean Girls was going to be around for a while and kind of be like a classic. And I started to get like calls to be like pride marshals and things, and I'm like, I can't do this and not be out. Like, and it was like really paining me. And so then I got a letter like right around the time I was contemplating all of this, and it was from a fan, and it said, I don't know if you're gay or not, and it doesn't matter. Now, I just want to preface and say that during Prop 8, I was the front of the line of the protests. I did all the protests. I made my signs. When it mattered to be gay, I was there. So I thought, but it always matters. And so I realized this in this letter. He said, I don't know if you're gay or not, and it doesn't matter. He goes, but when I was in 8th grade, I was beat up for being a sissy, and I was tortured for being chubby. And then your movie came out. And then on the first day of 9th grade, the popular senior girls walked up to me and said, you're like Damien, come sit with us. He's like, and you made me popular for all 4 years of my high school. He's like, and I can't thank you enough for giving me something in media that I could just look to and identify myself and say, that's me. And I sobbed the kind of sob that I don't know is humanly possible. I broke. And I found that like, how important it was just to be visible, and how every time I'm on screen, it's not just a win for my bank account or a win for my career. It's a win for any person who's different that looks like me or feels like they don't see themselves enough on television. And once I did that, stuff started opening up for me in such a different way. I booked Looking. I was able to like not only play a gay character again, but play one who is HIV positive, and play one who is of size and sexualized, and do all these other revolutionary things that we don't get to see in the queer community. And it really struck something inside me to think about legacy points and what to do to just continue to like break open any kind of stereotype. And I'm very choosy now with what I do. I used to do things to pay the rent, but since I've been able to be authentic, I've discovered that I'm really gifted at stand-up, and it was something that I've always wanted to do since I was 16, but I was afraid of being like, so I met this girl, or like being inauthentic in some way. And it's so funny because most of my comedy isn't really even about that. It's about me like talking about how goofy my mom is, like, and it's just so funny because I could have done it anyway, but I'm glad I waited, and this whole world has opened up to me with my writing and with my comedy and with my performance. I wish I made more movies. I still think that there's a lot. I mean, look at what's happening right now with Black Lives Matter, and how Jenny Slate stepped down from playing a Black character in cartoon, and all these other people are like, now just different people who were playing characters that weren't representing who they actually are now stepping down and letting people who represent. I feel the same way about being queer. I feel like there's no queer person who's no gay man who's won an Oscar. There's like yet, for acting, when like 30 people plus have won for playing gay people that are straight. And so I'm not even getting to go up for those roles still. Then there's like, there's no gay man who's ever sold out an arena for comedy the way Kevin Hart could, or even the way Ellen could. It's usually masculine presenting lesbians who were allowed, more masculine presenting lesbians, I should say, who for some reason seem more palatable to America than allowing other different types of queer people to come in and do something different. So I have just thought like, well, I get an hour a month at my home comedy space where I'm supposed to be working on my own hour, but I do my hour 3 times a week at colleges, particularly when the world is normal. So I open up that hour to host a show for all other LGBTQIA people, because I may not be the guy that fills the arena, but I'll find the LGBTQIA person who does. So I just consistently try to send every step I go up, and I think this is so imperative for a queer person, but every step you go up, you need to send the elevator back down 1 floor and pull somebody up with you, because no one's going to do it for us. It's truly like our mission to raise each other up and to continue to trailblaze. And sometimes the trailblazers get the arrows and not the land. But
yeah, I think like that's part of why obviously we're doing this panel right now, is to be like everybody who I would assume, I don't want to assume, but most people out there who are listening are in our community.
I want to say one thing to them real quick before we go any further. Like, I mean, I know I just portrayed a dark story because let me tell you something, all of our journeys are not going to be like lit all the way. And that's a part of what makes us special. And I think that you have to hang in there, because I'll say this straight out right now, that every single fucking thing that I got told I couldn't be an actor because of, or I got made fun of because of, is a reason that I cash a check.
Yes.
So I cash a check because I'm queer, and I cash a check because I'm fat, and I cash a check, because I'm Italian, and I cash a check. So anything that sets you apart, any pain point, anything that somebody can make fun of you for, you need to figure out how to bottle, because that's actually the thing that makes you different than the rest of the world. And that's actually the thing that you can sell and distribute and make other people who are that thing that is also different feel like they belong.
Yeah, I so agree with that. I think stepping into, like, I don't know, it's funny how this industry gets scared of people stepping out of a box, and then once they do, they go, oh, you're so unique, and that's so great, and now I can, like, it's a very interesting thing. But I totally agree that, like,
well, I still watch. Ryan Murphy is like one of my favorite people who really has done an incredible job for diversity.
yes.
Not only on screen but off screen. Most of his crew is people of color and women, and I just think he does incredible strides and stuff for our community. He can't be the only one, because he still isn't featuring people of size in a good way, and he still isn't featuring any men of size. Like, everybody comes with abs. And I think that there's more work to be done. As great as that man is, and as great as the other people out there that are doing awesome stuff for us, I still don't see the visibility. There's still only one or like 3 or 4 of me in Hollywood, period, because there's just no need for us. And so we are destined to tell our own stories then, and to make our own things. And, where's our queer Quentin Tarantino? I'm waiting for him, because I'm ready.
Yes, I feel that. Queer Quentin, please come up.
Yeah, come on out.
We're ready. We're ready for you.
We're so ready. I will work for scale.
So, turning to you, I know we can veer like a little bit from the original question, because I know you kind of addressed when you came out earlier, but we can actually transition to the next question, because you brought it up a little bit, Daniel, and I know there are varying thoughts on this. So in terms of, what are your feelings about queer people playing queer roles? And I don't want to say exclusively, but and we can even get specific into, do you have to also align with the specific letter under the queer umbrella to be able to?
I feel the same thing about Black people. Okay, like, we're having this discussion every day now and every minute, right? And it's like a Black person can also do, like Alex said. Alex is trans, but Alex also was a doctor, and that was it. It was like, he was a man, and that, that's great. We move on. We had that in Looking. Our casting director Carmen Cuba is brilliant at that. We had like a trans man chef, never mentioned it. Just another, because that's how the world is. I think once Hollywood starts reflecting the world more, that's when this stuff's going to happen. When it comes to what you were saying, if a Black person wants to play someone that's half Black, or they want to play someone that is from Africa, or they want to play someone that's from Jamaica, I think that's entirely up to them. And I think they're allowed to play the full spectrum of their community and their palette. And I feel the same for us. I feel if we're under the umbrella, and I feel that with the exclusion of trans stories, because I do feel like that is one of our most underrepresented parts of our umbrella right now. And I feel like as a community, like, we need to always lift the most underrepresented. So I think even though I want to see a trans person tell a trans story, I want to learn from them what it's like. And I think as far as gay people go, I think that we could. I don't have a problem with a gay person or a straight person really playing bi, but if the whole fact of their story is that's the arc, then we need a person to tell whether it's Black or trans or gay or whatever. We need the person who it is to tell our own stories. It's time we're telling our own stories. And now, if a person happens to be gay and they're a doctor, then it could maybe not be a gay person, and I wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. But when the focus of the role itself is a story that is meant to like break open something within the community or within a person's individuality, I think you really need to have that person tell that story. Otherwise, you're doing a disservice.
Sure, that makes complete sense. I mean, Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree in large part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. It's interesting. It's so interesting listening to your story, Daniel, because that's why I was afraid to audition for trans roles, is that I knew once I did, those were going to be the only roles that I got offered. And you know, my dad was an actor as well in the 80s, and well, that's a that's a much longer story, but he played gay and he's not. And so people thought he was gay because he was he was flamboyant in some ways. He was very animated. He was friends with gay men, and you know, he may have been bi. I'm not sure. It wasn't. My mom has. I don't know. He's dead. Not to say it. He's dead, so I have no idea. I didn't get to talk to him as an adult. But he was this iconic guy in Carell, and it was so important that he played it. And it was kind of very moving when Damien said, you know, when the kid commented or wrote you that he didn't matter if you were gay or not. So there are moments that you played that character and that meant something to him. That kind of representation was very important. So I think there are some times when that has been important up to now. That has worked up to now. And so the representation was at least in the media. But then it goes the world is changing even more and opening up even more, that people need to see. It's not just reflecting the world on screen, it's reflecting the world behind the screen as well, which I think we're talking about, which is we need to see LGBTQ IA plus behind, like, the people who are creating the stories and the actors who are playing them, that is authentic to what's there. People need to see, well, I'm not just being represented. Like, it was very painful for me growing up when the two trans guys that were on screen were played by cis women, Boys Don't Cry and Brandon, Tina, and Max on L Word. Just like, okay, so I'm just in drag, no one's ever going to take me seriously. And then that was the case for, trans women as well, were played by cis men. And since last year, like, that's still a thing. I think it's now people are, to use a current term, woke enough to understand that actors should be valued. Now, go ahead.
I just don't think it's an accident right now that trans men are having this huge like resurgence and like being found as like sex symbols by the gay community, and the same thing with dad bod syndrome and things like that. I think it is the visibility of people like us who open up people to those kind of situations and see what somebody else looks like. I mean, we're served the same meal every day in imagery, that it's like when you don't know if you're hungry for anything else. It's interesting because I've dated men who, like, my specialty is guys who haven't normally dated a big guy and then they end up liking me and then go, oh, like, this is great. Like, it's not usually like dudes that are like all obsessed with big guys, but I have dated some of those before. And the dudes that are all obsessed with big guys say that a lot of it came from, and more than one have cited that it's from James Gandolfini in Sopranos, like being sexy and having his shirt off and having sex, because they were able to see a man of size have sex on screen. So it's just like, you don't know you're attracted to that if that's not something you get a chance to even see. I also got another quick letter from someone when I was doing looking that was like, I've seen Mean Girls like once, and I have no idea what an Eddie Bear is. That was my character. They're like, but this guy came up to me in a club and he's way out of my league, and he's just like, you're my Eddie Bear. And I've been dating him for 3 months, and whatever the frig you're doing, keep doing. Like, it's that kind of effect that we have on acceptance. I'm negative, but I fight for HIV and AIDS rights all the time in Washington, and you could see stuff changing. And I had political aspirations at one point, but I realized that we are allowed to shift people's conscience more than a law could. We could shift the world's conscience through a story, through storytelling, through portrayal, in a way that will make them vote different And in Washington, it's a bunch of people placating the people who fund their campaigns. So here we are.
We have the president we have because Hollywood created him. I hate to say that, but that's 100%.
But here's the thing, and as you'll see, right? Like, if every single person in the world is chanting Black Lives Matter, eventually he's going to have to go with the crowd.
Yeah. Well,
it's eventually, or we're going to have to get him out and bring someone who does. Because once we don't accept it anymore, once everyone's on the same page, the world has to change. It doesn't really have a choice. Like, the fact that Disney changed it's Splash Mountain and to be about the Princess and the Frog, I think is just the perfect representation. That was some like 15-year-old TikToker's idea. You know what I'm saying? And it like caught fire. And I think that that's the kind of ideas that we could put in people's head, telling queer stories and telling trans stories and telling our stories.
So on that note, what are your thoughts on, queer actors playing queer roles, feelings of being limited to that? What are your experiences? What are your thoughts?
If I go back to, I came out right when had been playing a lot of straight roles. When I kissed the girl and realized I'm a lesbian, I was in a little place called Adelaide, in Australia, and it's the film world, like it wasn't that big there, and I was still playing a lot of straight characters. And it actually wasn't until I got a role in 2013, All About Eve, where I played the lead, who is a lesbian DJ, not out to her Lebanese parents. It wasn't until I got that role that then I came to the States and my whole LGBTQ life opened in the film world. So as soon as I got here, I actually was in that world, which was new to me, and I wasn't at all concerned about it. In fact, I thought the more representation that is out there, then the more people are able to see themselves on the screen, the more people don't feel alone. In regards to playing queers on screen, mm-hmm. I think ultimately I would love that to be happening more, that we are able to tell our own stories on media. But as well as saying that, people are still telling our stories, and it may be still that the straights are playing our stories, and yes, that's frustrating, but there's still stories that are out there in the media that people are able to be seen, or at least able to see, and maybe potentially align themselves with that and then not feel so alone either. I think the more that we are out in this world and the more that we are able to tell our stories, then the more that, we look, you think about the world even just 2 years ago and how much more open our community is, and the fact that there are a lot more people out there in our community who are actually telling our stories. So you look at our future, maybe hopefully 2 years down the track again, and it's going to be changed even more. I think, we can say how Hollywood isn't doing this right thing, that they're still telling a lot of straight stories, hundreds and thousands of straight stories that you can find. Yes, that is correct, but they are trying to make a difference. And I think the fact that we have people in there who are telling our stories, and it is coming to fruition, like on big media, like on Showtime and in actual movies, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, having that film seen all around the world. Our stories are out there and they're being told, and yeah, a lot of them are being told by straight people, but we're getting to the point where, look, ultimately, I think as long as our story is being told, that is.
I don't want to take that as an answer, though. I don't want to take like that. As long as we're getting a little piece of crumb, then we're satisfied. Because I think we've taken that answer for long enough. I'm sick of our love stories being told by straight people. I don't want to watch Call Me by Your Name with straight people. I don't want to watch Brokeback Mountain with straight people. I want to see people that I could actually envision actually being in love, or being in love with me when I watch our love stories. And and Kate Blanchett recently said that she's an actor, and actors should be able to play anything that they want to in the world. And as an actor who appreciates the craft of acting and loves it for everything it is in my soul, I 100% agree. Just not now. Now is the time for us to emerge. So
Yeah,
Kate,
we are starting to emerge now. Like, we are actually creating changes, and we are actually doing difference, and we are actually being the representation. So I hear you. Yeah. Like, our stories need to be told by our community, and we're actually making that stance, and we're actually doing that now.
And besides us telling new stories, because it's harder to get a gay film made, I know that, but our community needs
to get a lesbian film made than a gay film.
Yeah, well, either way, our stories are hard to get made, and we not only need to do that, but we need to employ our people. We need to have our people performing at Pride. We need to have our people on the cover of our magazines, because we keep doing this gay baiting thing, like where we keep giving the same positions. There's only Chris Evans is an incredible frigging ally and a wonderful guy. Every time I've ever met him in Hollywood, I think he's a fantastic human being. But enough. I don't want to see Chris Evans anymore on the cover of Out. We get it. You're on our side. Show me, like, a young gay entrepreneur. Show me like a lesbian baker before I see another Hollywood movie star trying to sell me their abs. I don't want it.
Yeah, I totally get that. I also think the other side of this is that I think we can find, in terms of when you're saying not now, and like, I feel like we can find a middle ground also when the casting world, the producers, the directors start also seeing us for not just our queerness. Which is
if I could see a gay person playing a straight role in a TV show, then sure, you could have a straight person playing a gay.
I think that's a huge part of this, is that, like, it's, we can't be told, hey, you're not going to play this because we want Cate Blanchett to come in and play it, and she's straight, but also we're not going to cast you in the straight role because we don't believe you because we know you're queer. That's a terrible place to be. So I agree. I mean, I hope that eventually we can all play all the things, but it's not going to balance out until we as queer people are seen as equal to everybody else and equal to other actors. Alex, what do you have to say on this? Sorry, I feel like I didn't know if you were raising your hand.
No. Oh, I'm a little restless. I move. I'm like, oh, you had to have the background. I mean, Jesus, trying not to distract everybody. But I mean, I guess basically to my point before is I think that we've been able to get to where we are now because of representation. We have to acknowledge that straight people told our stories, and so we are here now. Like, that's why I always go back, and I'm like, not to mention my dad again, but he's a huge inspiration to me. And I don't talk about it a lot, but he played characters who were different, and he represented a group of people in multiple ways who were not represented and they were not like him. And I think he was a trailblazer because of that. And I acknowledge that. I appreciate it. And thank God, because now I'm able to play myself, and that's great. But I would also like to play a cis character. I would also like to just play how I identify. And because that's not, I mean, I know casting directors. I know that it's not their fault all the time. That was a horrible story about Sherry Baby, but I know the executives. I know what's going on. It's not always their fault. And there is still stigma that once you're disclosed your gender identity or your sexual identity, they're not willing to put you in anything but that. And that is unfortunate. And so because of that, then let us play ourselves and let us tell our stories. Now, with this thought in mind, my wife created a pilot. It's very close to our hearts. I was a story producer, I did not create it. She created it. No way I could create this. She's the idea factory. She's brilliant. But I produced the presentation to pitch around. We're maybe going to turn it into a web series. Watching, is it BILF or do you say BILF?
Biffle.
Biffle. Okay. Biffle. Like, I watched it. I was like, oh, web series and I've watched some up to now, but I'm like, oh no, that is such quality production. Dude, it was so good. And I'm like, okay, maybe we can do this. We can create this pilot and split it up and make it into a web series because it's hard to get made. Big surprise. And I'm not surprised, but it also, COVID happened in the middle of pitching. So I'm like, well, fuck it, whatever. Now we're just going to do it. But it's important. I think it is going to we're going to make sure it gets made, and she has a lot of stories to tell, and so do I. And so I'm involved in it. There's a character who's based on me in high school. There's a character based on her. She had one best friend who she didn't find, was in the closet. She had one best friend who was the only gay boy in school. And she had another friend who, well, the one who was closeted became this other character. Anyway, we get to choose, because of casting, we got to choose some people who were actually queer, who got to play queer roles. We made sure of that. But there are also people in it who are playing queer because of the limited casting time we had, who are not. And we kind of had to just take that balance and be like, all right, well, we get to choose because it's our story. And we get to say, this person is right. And I'm going to take it. I'm going to go with it. She's a good actor. You know, she gets it. She's empathetic. I'm going to take it. And so she's the one person in the show who's not queer, and she's playing a closeted lesbian. Okay. So she can also play in the closet. You know, and we don't really know her sexuality. No offense, we don't. She says what she is, but maybe it's important for her to play it. She really wanted to, so we're like, okay, it worked for us because it was our story to tell. So maybe that's where the balance comes.
There's also an issue that a lot of our queer performers haven't had an opportunity to cut their teeth and get as good, or or to work as much.
Big deal. Yeah.
Whenever I'm on the casting side, you know, I'm working on my first feature right now. Well, it's on hold obviously with everything, but like when we were doing casting and everything, I was finding a hard time finding some queer people to fit these roles and be able to handle them as well as the straight guys, because they've had way more acting experience.
Yes, I have also come across that. I was in something a year and a half ago. It's called Lesbian Love Octagon. That's just an incredible musical. And they're looking to potentially turn it into a series, but it's so good. And it was very hard to cast because they really wanted all queer musical theater actors across the spectrum. And you just realized in trying to cast this thing, like that, because a lot of people haven't been taken seriously, they just haven't had the opportunity to train, and specifically in musical theater, which is, you know, another huge ask on top of everything else. So I totally feel that. Quickly, in the last like 5 minutes, I know it's gonna, I mean, we gotta kind of limit it to a minute per person here, but I really wanted to ask this question, you know, so we get on these panels and we talk a lot about queerness and queerness informing ourselves as artists and our stories and the things that we want to put out in the world. But we also are all intersectional in our own right. And so I wanted to ask all of you quickly, what is another identity under your own personal umbrella that really informs your own work and you as a person? I'm going to start with Mandahla. Yeah.
I'm still trying to think of that. You know, I think I find that question difficult to answer because I mean, I'm a lesbian, and as soon as I found that out, I came out and I follow my heart, and I don't know, maybe I'm me. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to answer that question.
Australian?
I'm Australian, yes.
You're part Sri Lankan?
I'm a pirate, yes.
You're a pirate.
Look, in this world that I've found myself in, I don't care that I'm gay. I love the fact that I love women, and I love women so much, and I'm okay with that. When I did find that out, I grew up with nuns, and I was terrified of telling my nuns that I had a girlfriend, and they were like, as long as you're happy, we're happy. So like, that has always been my identity, is I follow my heart. And I follow my heart because I know that I am a messenger and I am a representation for other people.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What about you, Alex?
I have a few, actually, which I'm actually big in highlighting those other identities because my life is spent more in those arenas. Crazy enough, I'm trans, that's true, but I'm a dad. You know, I have three little kids.
Oh.
Yeah, they take up a lot of my time, so I'm a dad most of the time, all the time, and a husband. I love my wife. We spend a lot of time together, and I'm vegan, And that's also a big part of our lives because we eat a lot. They eat nonstop, and we have to constantly talk to them about how we are vegan, and they're also spend a lot of time with our animals. And so they're learning all about animal kindness and kindness to all human and non-human animals. So that's a lot. It's a lot going on. And
lots of great hats.
What'd you say?
Lots of great hats that you're wearing. Those are some nice hats.
Yeah. I had fun.
Yeah,
Nicole, quickly on top of that, if I may,
yeah.
With the identity, hearing Alex talk about that, I very much identify with mental health as well.
Mhm.
That is a big part of my identity, and the fact that I am very vocal about that in particular.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get that one out there.
I was thinking that, but I didn't want to put that on you.
Thank you for
So
sending it to me telepathically.
There you go. Daniel, what about you?
I definitely identify as gay. I think I feel very strongly about the queer also. I think I'm a queer person. I really am Italian, you know. I mean, that's such a huge part of my identity. And an uncle and a friend, but I'm a Christian too. I have a podcast called Yas Jesus.
Yes,
which-
I saw that. That's awesome.
in this podcast, we're not slut shaming. We are sex positive. We do a thing called Big Bible Stories where we get stoned and go through some of the like we're just very open and real
That's
about
great.
how to look at Christianity through the rainbow lens.
Yes,
So,
I saw that you had that, and I wanted to. We'll talk more off screen.
Yeah.
But I also identify as Christian. Right? I had a very
Oh, well, then you would love this. You would love this. My
experience.
co-host, Azariah Southworth, was the first Christian celebrity to come out. He was a televangelist for music, and when he became gay, they fired him. And so it's 10 years later, and now he started this podcast with me, and we're having the most fun. I mean, just finding out things that homosexuality was added to the Bible in the 1940s, like the word, and then like finding out that Sodom and Gomorrah had nothing to do with being gay, like that it was about being wealthy, not helping the poor, and just all these things that we're just uncovering. There's like a very Catfish Leah Remini moment happening, as well as us just exploring our own faith.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. So everybody, we're out of time, but follow all of these wonderful actors and all the things that they're doing, including this podcast that I'm definitely going to tune into. Thank you everybody so much for your time. This was a great conversation.
So glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks,
it's awesome.
everybody.